Alice and I are always looking to be more healthy, and we were just talking about how fasting is one of the best ways to do that, but it's so hard. But the great thing about Prolon is that's not what you're doing. It's not that you're not eating for 5 days. Instead, you're using their science-backed program to convince your body you're fasting.
You guys, this 5-day program really is amazing. It comes beautifully packaged and it does all the thinking for you. Each day is its own box. And by following their program, I know I just feel so much better. And I can't wait to experience Prolong Next Gen and continue to see results. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolong is offering the Prosecutors listeners 15% off site-wide plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/prosecutors. That's PROLONLIFE.com/prosecutors to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/prosecutors.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on The Prosecutors, a young woman with no enemies is shot and killed while setting up for a garage sale at her home. Who killed Liz Barraza? Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, by my intelligente co-host, Alice.
It sounds more intelligent when you say it not in English, so thanks.
It's true. It's true. And you are. You're so wise, Alice. So wise. So glad to be back here with you in our first recording after CrimeCon.
Oh, didn't it feel like a family reunion? Like, I hugged so many people. I hope I didn't offend anybody because I didn't ask anyone if they were okay being hugged. But I hugged a lot of people.
Yeah, hugged a lot of people. Took a lot of photographs. It was another amazing experience. Those of you who have not had the opportunity to do CrimeCon, it's a lot of fun. I know it can be expensive. It's a big hassle sometimes to travel that far. It's in Denver in about a year and 3 months, so you have a while to plan. This most recent CrimeCon seemed like it was just... We were in Orlando, and I turned around, and all of a sudden we're in Nashville for CrimeCon. This one's going to be a while, but I hope you guys who did not get to come will come so we can meet you and hang out with you. And I just want to say this, because I'm not exactly sure when this episode will air, because we have some other stuff we're going to do, so this one may get pushed back a while. But whenever you hear it, I hope those of you who attended CrimeCon enjoyed it, and those of you we met, I hope that it was everything you hoped it would be, because I will say one thing that is stressful for me at CrimeCon is we have so many wonderful people who come up to us and say things like, I came here to meet you. And we only get to spend a few minutes with you. And I hope when you walk away from that, it was worth it. I hope that we were able to give you the time and attention you deserve, because you deserve it all. And I know it was crazy at times, but we enjoyed meeting you guys so much.
Every time someone said something like that, I had to literally choke back tears because I was like, I really hope you came for other things because I'm not worth that. But oh, you guys, truly, we met thousands of you. And then afterwards, some of you posted on the gallery and were like, I didn't want to say hi because I was nervous. So I just watched. Guys, come up to us. Oh my goodness. Please do not do that. I mean, look, we're family. And the other thing is that people kept saying, it's so weird because I feel like I know you, but you don't know me. On the contrary, I think we do know you because if you've stuck around for literally hundreds of episodes and listened to us talk about sweet nothings for thousands of hours, we are friends. because there are people in our lives who don't listen to us talk this much. And so I do know a lot about you just based on kind of what you choose to do with your time. So I don't think it's a one-sided relationship at all. And I was proved correct by meeting so many of you at CrimeCon. I'm going to get teary right now because I just loved spending time with all of you. So all this to say is thank you for giving us the honor of meeting with you all. I'm sorry that at some point we had to take a bathroom break and may have missed a couple of you, but we tried so hard to stay at the table, except when CrimeCon forced us to step away on like CrimeCon duties. Otherwise, I was pretty proud of us. We were pretty barefoot on Podcast Row.
We were at the table more this year than ever before. So if you missed us this year, I don't know. I don't know how that happened, but
we were so there.
Yeah, we don't want to make this all about CrimeCon. We're going to do a CrimeCon episode, but we did just want to say that we're very excited to be back today with a new case, and this is a weird one, and it's a tragic one. It's a case that really has no good explanation, even though there is so much evidence of what happened, including video and audio of the crime itself. And yet it remains unsolved to this day, and it's one that can be solved and should be solved, and that is the murder of Liz Barraza. We've talked enough, so let's dive in. This is the story of Elizabeth Liz Newell Barraza. She was born June 16th, 1989 in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Liz was described by those who knew her as kind, loving, and having a big heart. She was an avid fan of the Chicago Cubs, the Harry Potter series, and Star Wars. She attended college at Sam Houston State University, where she met the love of her life, Sergio Barraza. The pair married in 2014 and bought a home in the Princeton Place subdivision in Tomball, Texas in 2016. And if you want to know how Tomball got its name, listen to Texas True Crime. And the first 10 minutes are all about how Tomball got its name. Tom Ball is actually the name of a person. Tom Ball. So anyway,
Tomball, Texas.
That was named after him.
Brett.
Tomball, Texas.
This is like hurting my Texas heart right now. It's just Tomball.
Well, it is Tom Ball, but his name was Tom Ball, and they put the two words together and made Tom Ball. Anyways, so Sergio and Liz had a lot in common. They shared a love of all things Star Wars and Harry Potter, and they were both members of the 501st Legion, a Star Wars fan club where its members cosplayed as various characters and visited local children's hospitals to boost patients' spirits. In fact, Liz was a member of the Legion's command staff. In celebration of their upcoming 5th wedding anniversary, they had been planning a trip down to Orlando, Florida, in January of 2019 to visit Universal Studios and see the new wizarding world of Harry Potter. And Liz was one of those people that if this were a Dateline episode, we would say she lit up the room, because it seems like she actually was somebody who did that. Everyone who knew Liz, everyone who met Liz, talked about how much of a wonderful person she was and how giving she was and how much she liked to give back to the community, to kids, to everybody else, and to be a part of making people's lives better.
And the lead up to what's about to happen makes this all the more tragic. Here they are celebrating a joyous event in their marriage to be able to go on a vacation that they were saving up for. In fact, they were trying to earn some extra cash before their upcoming trip. And Liz decided to host a garage sale just a couple days before leaving to earn that cash. This was something she'd done before when her and Sergio decided to take a trip. The couple didn't really advertise the sale widely. There were no Facebook posts and really just a couple handmade signs in the neighborhood to let kind of their neighbors know about the plan for this garage sale. So on the morning of January 25th, 2019, Liz woke up early and headed outside to begin setting up for the yard sale that would occur later that day. But minutes later, the 29-year-old would be shot dead in her driveway by an unknown assailant.
So let's take you to January 24th, 2019, the day before this occurs. As Alice said, the evening before the garage sale, Liz and Sergio, they go around the neighborhood. They're hanging up a couple signs to advertise the sale, taking place Friday, January 25th and Saturday, January 26th. And this is the only form of advertising. They didn't put anything in the paper. They didn't put anything on Facebook. They didn't tweet about it. Nothing like that. In fact, they only even mentioned it to a few people, a couple coworkers and Liz's mom. So very few people knew about this, and this is going to be important as we go forward with the story. This is a very strange murder. The timing of it's strange. How it occurs is strange. The fact that it occurs at the home is strange. So this added sort of complication of the garage sale, something that not many people knew about. Is it a part of the murder, or is it just a coincidence? That's something that no one really knows. This case is very much unsolved, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind as we continue to move through the timeline.
That's a really great point, because in this day and age, with Facebook, Facebook Marketplace, Facebook groups with communities within your neighborhood, within moms groups, within garage sale groups, the buy nothing or buy sell trade sort of Facebook groups that are very prevalent. This is not a widely circulated or widely publicized event. Obviously, this is going to be important, because if it had anything to do with the garage sale, this is someone who was close by, literally circling the neighborhood to be able to even see signs of a garage sale, which obviously points to Brett's question is, does the garage sale have anything to do with this? So that's the day before the garage sale. The day of the garage sale, January 25th, 2019, at 2 a.m. that morning, several residents in the neighborhood spotted a dark-colored Nissan Frontier driving around the Princeton Place subdivision. And this was strange enough for them to notice that this was not a car that they necessarily recognized. Really middle of the night here. Now, 6:08 a.m., Liz is an early riser. She wakes up and she drives to a nearby Starbucks to get coffee. Ordinarily, Liz would have gone to work this day. It was a Friday. But whether she took off work that day or called in sick, we're not exactly sure. But what is clear is she decided to stay home to set up for the yard sale that was to happen later that day. At 6:16 a.m., the Starbucks is very close by, so she comes back home with her Starbucks coffee, and she and Sergio spend the next half hour setting up items for the sale right outside of their home.
So at 6:47 a.m., a black Nissan Frontier, one that matches the description of the one people had seen earlier in the day, enters the Princeton Place neighborhood and then parks in a parking lot of the Goddard School. A minute later, the car leaves the parking lot and heads down a different street. One thing about this vehicle that you're going to notice, at times it feels like the driver is doing things intentionally. At other times, it almost feels like the driver doesn't really know where they are or exactly what they're trying to do. So for instance, imagine that this person has come to this neighborhood with the intention of killing Liz and intending to kill her at a certain time. You could imagine that person parking in the parking lot and waiting till the appropriate time and then going out and doing what they're going to do. But instead, it's almost like they're hesitant. They're doing something, they're stopping. Maybe they thought about staying there for a little while and then they decide to keep driving. It's also unclear at that point, have they entered the neighborhood to do what they're going to do here in a few minutes? Or is this something random? We don't know for certain. All we know is what we see on the video. At 6:48 a.m., so right around the time the truck is leaving the Goddard parking lot, Sergio leaves for work in his white panel van. Liz remains outside setting up for the sale. Now, Sergio worked with his dad, and ordinarily he left closer to 7. So this was a mild deviation from his ordinary habits. It's 6:48. So it's not that much earlier than when he normally leaves. I can tell you, if you tried to track when I left my house every day, it is all over the place. Like I am, sometimes I leave relatively early. Sometimes I leave very late. Leaving 10 minutes here or there isn't really that big a deal. But on this day, he does leave about 10 minutes earlier than he would normally leave. At 6:51 a.m., once again, this Nissan Frontier comes back into view of one of the cameras we have, and it is now seen heading in the direction of the Barraza home.
So this is interesting because based on kind of our views of where this Nissan Frontier is coming from, it's so close in time to when Sergio's white panel van, which that's just a kind of a distinctive car, right? It's a work van. Whether this Nissan was waiting around to watch this white panel van leave, and therefore it doesn't really matter when Sergio would leave if he's trying to get Liz alone. Maybe he's sitting at the entrance waiting to see the car pass by. As soon as he does, then the Nissan Frontier drives in. Whatever it is, if it's not that, This is incredibly coincidental that he rolls in really within minutes of Sergio leaving and making his target, who knows if it was how intended this target was, vulnerable and completely alone. 1 minute later, after we see the Nissan Frontier come into the view and going in the direction of the Barraza home at 6:52, the Nissan Frontier approaches the Barraza home and parks behind Liz's vehicle. I don't like this. When someone parks behind your car, there's nowhere for you to go. That's a reason the police, for example, park behind your car if you're in a driveway, so that it would be difficult for you to get away quickly. The driver gets out of the car and walks towards the driveway where Liz is standing. Remember, she's setting up for the day. Now, he or she, we'll talk more about who this person is, but it's not completely clear from the video. This person approaches Liz and she says, "Good morning." The driver pulls out a firearm without hesitation, points it at Liz. Liz stumbles backwards, and the driver then reaches out with the other hand and appears to hand Liz something while speaking to her. None of the driver's words can be made out in the video. This entire event takes place in about just 6 seconds. So when I said there's no hesitation from the driver, I truly mean no hesitation. Walks up to her, pulls out the gun, hands her seemingly something, says something. And then the driver rapidly fires 3 shots at Liz, hitting her in the neck and chest. And when she's on the ground, in complete execution style, the assailant fires a 4th shot right into Liz's face. And as I've mentioned, this is all captured in a video that is actually available to watch online.
It is available to watch online. We'll include the links to it on the website. You can find it very easily. It's difficult to watch at times, but the videos, there's a couple of them. One thing that's very important is they include footage of the vehicle. And the police have said the vehicle, in their view, is the key to solving this case. Obviously, they also include footage of the assailant, and they include the murder. If you watch these videos, you will see Liz murdered. You will see this person shoot her 3 times, walk up to her, and shoot her execution style. It's a brutal video. It happens very quickly, as Alice said, but there's a few things to note about it. Number 1, the person, he or she is walking very quickly as it approaches Liz. The assailant pulls out that gun with the right hand, and it's clear that, look, the video is not great. It's not like it's high definition or anything. It's basically from a Ring camera across the street. But you can tell the person's pulled out a gun because when they do, they reach their arm out and Liz stumbles backwards. So you can tell someone is pointing a gun at her. And then the person immediately reaches out with that other hand. And it's as if they're pointing a gun at Liz with one hand and showing her something with the other, or handing her something with the other. And they're saying something to her. So this is not the person walks up, pulls out a gun, and shoots her. There's about 5 seconds between when they pull out that gun and when they pull the trigger. It's not a lot of time. Whatever happened very quickly. And then once they decide to shoot, they want to kill. And at that point, they turn around and run away.
And that's really, really interesting because if that assailant is handing Liz something, you would think it's something that either she has to receive or respond to. But there's not time for her to do either. There's not time for her to respond, to say something, because you can imagine if it were a threat, for example, a note that says, "Give me $200,000 a la DB Cooper." There's not time. And she's clearly going to be shot execution style. So the purpose of these shots was to kill her. You can't even hold on to something when you're being shot in the face. And so I'm not completely sold that the assailant was handing her something. I wonder if it was actually showing her something that maybe made clear who had sent them or made clear why she was being shot. But I always thought that was very interesting, that there's absolutely no time for her to react or to respond or give some sort of, pleading for her life, if that's what the assailant had wanted. I don't think the assailant had any other purpose but to show up and make sure she was dead.
And there's a lot of speculation out there about what exactly this person handed to Liz. We don't know the answer to that question. There has been speculation online that it was a note and that the police have the note. But we don't know that. And if it is a note, we have no idea what the note says. This speculation, you know how it is online. It's supposedly someone close to the investigation told somebody in the family that that's what it was. But we don't know if that's true. We certainly can't confirm it. But if you watch the video, it looks for all the world like this person is handing something to Liz. It's a very strange interaction. The whole thing is very strange. But at this point, this person, whoever it is, they are now fleeing. They are running away. They sprint back to the truck. They walked briskly up to where Liz was, but after the shooting, they take off running. At the same time, a neighbor who had heard the gunshots calls 911. There are two videos. If you watch the second one, these are loud gunshots. Also, most likely a revolver, because the police did not find any shell casings at the scene, and this person did not stop to pick anything up. And when you don't find shell casings in a shooting, that means it's a revolver, because the revolver keeps the shell casings in the cylinder. It does not eject them in the same way that a semi-automatic like a Glock would. So they shoot them with this revolver. It's very loud. Someone is calling 911, and they actually witness this Nissan Frontier driving quickly away from the scene. This is at 6:53 a.m. Interestingly, 2 minutes later, at 6:55, the Nissan Frontier returns to the scene, driving past the Barraza house. So this is sort of an interesting question about what happened here. Generally speaking, the speculation is that the person is driving back by to see whether or not Liz is alive or dead. That's certainly possible, but I'll just note, they shot her 3 times in the chest and then an execution shot into the head. I wonder, particularly given what we've seen from this driver before, if in fact they went the wrong way and had to turn around and drive back past the scene because that was the only way to get out of the neighborhood. You guys have driven around neighborhoods like this where there's cul-de-sacs and there's dead ends, and how to actually get out can be difficult if you're not familiar with the area.
Get this, adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Wondery. Greenlight.com/Wondery.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
So, just to give a little recap, within 5 minutes of her husband leaving, Liz is on the ground of their driveway, shot to death. And I think that's a really good theory that he may have gone the wrong way, except it seems so strange that he was there at 2 a.m., so about 5 hours earlier, presumably scoping out this area. But if he's scoping out the neighborhood writ large, that may not help him specifically with the Barraza house and what their cul-de-sac situation is and one-way streets are. And it would make sense that if he's running so fast, and he's running really fast to get out of there, as anyone should, loud revolver or a loud gun, knowing that police are probably on their way, why would he come back just 2 minutes later unless he had to U-turn around and come the other way? So at 6:58, 2 more neighbors call 911 after hearing the gunshots. The Harris County constables arrive to the scene, and Liz, miraculously, despite being shot directly in the face, is still alive. When they enter the home, they set off the family's alarm, and this is what actually alerts both Sergio and Liz's parents that something is wrong, because they got an alert that the alarm's been tripped. At 7:21 a.m., a life flight arrives to the residence to transport Liz to Memorial Hermann Hospital, the same hospital where Liz spent many hours volunteering at with the 501st Legion.
So at 7:37, Liz's parents arrive at her home. You can just imagine how horrific all of this is. By the time they get there, the life flight has already taken off and taken Liz to the hospital. So they leave shortly thereafter to go see Liz at the hospital. At 7:51, Sergio arrives back at the home, and he is immediately detained by the police for questioning because, obviously, he's the husband. Liz has been shot. We've all been listening to true crime long enough that we know the first suspect is going to be the husband, and so it is in this case.
I was just going to say how sad it was that she was still alive and how much incredible pain. And she actually lives for a while. She doesn't die immediately, but to go through kind of all of this tragedy. One note on Sergio, he's back at the house basically an hour and 3 minutes after he last left. I don't know exactly where he was, but he was alerted at 6:58, so just before 7, and it takes him about 52, 53 minutes to get back home. It could be that he'd already been an hour away, but the timing doesn't quite work out. Now, look, alarms are set off all the time. In fact, my fire alarm went off today because I was making steaks. So a lot of alarms in my life I disregard and don't think anything of it. But that's just an interesting timing thing. So really, when he was about 10 minutes away from his house was when he was first alerted of the alarm at his house being set off. He may not have thought anything of it. He may have been driving and not looking at his phone. That's also a possibility. But he comes home an hour after he last left.
Right. And Sergio was at work. He was I think his father was in construction. So my understanding of how this went down is they were headed to a work site. Sergio didn't notice until they got there. He looked at his phone. He had the ability to actually access cameras on his phone to see what was going on in his house. So he turns on the cameras, and there's 2 police officers looking at him through the camera, and they basically tell him, there's something that's happened. You need to come home as soon as possible. And that's the point where he turns around and goes back. So he arrives back around 7:51, January 26th at 1:40 p.m. Liz, she was young and she was strong and she fought, but that last shot to the head is really what did it. And a lot of scans came back and they showed that Liz was brain dead. So even though she was still fighting and she was still alive, she was never going to recover. At that point, emergency life support was removed and she was pronounced dead at 1:40 p.m. Liz was an organ donor, and in fact, she was able to save 4 lives through the donation of kidneys, her heart, and her liver, and she also was able to give someone the gift of vision through the donation of her corneas. So at least something good came out of this awful tragedy. And Liz, as we said, was loved. Many people loved her, and they were shocked throughout the community at her death. On February 1st, 2019, there was a candlelight vigil held for Liz at her home, and more than 100 people attended, and the celebration of her life was held the next day on February 2nd, 2019.
So that's really the whole timeline. It's a very, very tight timeline. Really, everything happens in about 5 to 7 minutes from the time Sergio leaves to Liz being dead and this Nissan Frontier seen driving away and then seemingly back again. Despite video footage of this brutal attack, investigators have not made any arrests to date pertaining to Liz's murder. They continue to follow up on leads and have released several pieces of important information to the public to assist in the case. Authorities confirmed that the shooter was driving, quote, a dark-colored Nissan Frontier Pro 4X Crew Cab 2013 or newer. One thing to note about this, it's kind of a big car, kind of stands out. It's not some beat-up old sedan. It's pretty distinctive, right? It's a big car. It's a nicer car. And the police also released footage of the suspected shooter fleeing from the Barraza home. Using the surveillance footage, many people have surmised that this shooter was a woman based on their gait and stature. However, one thing to note is there were 4 shots fired, and when the gun is fired, there's almost no recoil, causing some people to believe that the individual is male, intentionally trying to look like a woman. So to break that down, a recoil, when you shoot a gun, it like reverberates back, like Newton's law of whatever stays in motion, whatever.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite
physics.
reaction.
there we go. I did terribly in physics. There's a reaction that pushes you back. And it takes some force and some strength to be able to keep the gun steady, to have a steady shot so that you don't see a recoil. If you see someone who is unsure of what they're doing, don't know that there's going to be a recoil, when you watch them shoot the gun, they'll kind of stumble backwards because of the kind of force from the gun pushing them backwards, unless they know what to expect and have the strength to be able to resist that force pushing back on them. And this is so similar in a lot of ways to the Missy Beavers case, where a woman is killed in a church teaching a fitness class, and there's also footage of the killer walking through the halls before the murder happens. And people also are confused about whether it's a man or a woman in that video. I think it's very difficult to tell whether someone is a man or a woman in these videos. There's just not enough to go by, especially if you're trying to disguise yourself. Right? You can throw on a wig and all of a sudden, maybe it kind of, the person kind of looks like a woman, but they kind of move like a man. They seem to be taller than the average man. These things can throw someone off very easily. And also, as we all know, the spectrum of what men and women look like and how tall they are, how, stocky they are, can vary widely. So I think that's a bit of a fool's errand to say one way or the other.
So a couple things on this. Let's talk about guns for a second. My personal opinion is that revolvers have much more of a recoil than your more modern firearms. So if you're firing a Glock or a 6 Hour or something like that, they're designed to have less recoil. But handguns have a lot of recoil. They really do. You got a little cannon in your hand and there's an explosion happening. And I've shoot guns, probably not as much as some of you, but more than other of you. And honestly, I like shooting rifles better than handguns, because handguns, like every time you pull it's like the gun just wants to fly to your hand. That's just that's just my experience. I prefer shotguns and everything else to handguns. All this to say, there's a couple things about this. Number one, this person has absolute control over this firearm. They are an experienced shooter. I have no question about that in my mind. They have shot guns many times. Now look, this is Texas. And people in Texas, they love shooting guns. Women in Texas love shooting guns.
We used to go to the backyard and shoot rattlesnakes.
There you go. There's most of the women in Texas are probably far better shots than I am. So the fact that this person is both confident with the weapon, controls the weapon, knows what they're doing, I don't think necessarily says that they're a man, though I would say it probably does lean in that direction. The other thing that's interesting, so based on analysis of the video, the police think that this person is about the same height as Liz. Now, it's a little weird because there's a slope and everything else. If that's true, this person is probably between 5'2" and 5'4". That is pretty short for a man, though obviously there are men who are that short. But that does tend to lead you to think it might be more likely to be a woman, so that sort of cuts that direction. And of course, Alice, I think, is about to talk about what this person is wearing.
Yeah, what this person is wearing is confusing, to say the least. It's possible the shooter is wearing either a costume or some sort of long robe with thigh-high boots. One thing to note, this is January, so even in Texas, even in Tomball, it's chilly. It can be chilly on a January. It could be super hot, but it could also be cold. So it could be a robe, could be a costume, could be just like a trench coat, and could be thigh-high boots, or could be tight-fitting pants, right? That a man could wear, or leggings that a woman could wear. So again, I think what the person's wearing, it's difficult to use that alone to say this is a man or a woman.
And I don't know what way this cuts. Some of you will think this is sexist. The person is driving a big truck, which I feel like makes me lean more towards man, though I know plenty of women who have trucks too.
Or driving a man in their life's truck, right?
That could also be true, yeah.
Either or. That's a really good point. A lot of people in Texas have trucks, whether they need the truck for work or not. I agree with you. Like in my high school parking lot, most of the trucks belong to men. But I will say this. We all had access to trucks. If I wanted to drive one, there were like a dozen trucks I could borrow because everyone I knew had a truck. So if what this person wanted to drive was a truck, it could have been theirs. We always talk about this as well. A lot of people commit crimes not in their own vehicles because what do you have with a vehicle? You have a license plate that may be able to be tracked to someone. And so we've talked about this a lot where when we arrest people in their cars for illicit activities like drug dealing, almost 100% of the time, it's not their car in their name. It belongs to a sister or a mother or a grandmother. So it could be the case here that they're trying to use a car that is not registered in their own name. The description of this vehicle is particularly helpful because the Nissan Frontier is really not a popular vehicle in this area. Most trucks are either Fords or Chevys. There is currently a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Liz's murder. If you have any information, and hopefully someone does, because a lot of people saw this Nissan Frontier, a lot of people heard the gunshots, and it wasn't in the dark of night. It was early in the day, but this is kind of the beginning of rush hour with cars driving around. Please contact Crime Stoppers of Houston tip line at 713-222-TIPS if you know anything. If you're in the area, you're in this neighborhood, you were in the parking lot of the Goddard School, if you were dropping off someone at the Goddard School, you saw something, it may be a piece of the puzzle that the police just don't have yet.
And it's so funny because we mentioned the truck and how the truck is rare. There aren't that many in this area. The police responding to this actually stopped a truck that perfectly fit the description. Thought this was going to be a huge break, and it was a completely unrelated person. So the truck may be more rare than your average Ford or Chevy, but it's not so rare. It's not like they were driving, like a 1967 convertible Corvette or something. It's rare, and it could be helpful, but not so much so that we've figured anything out in the last 5 years, because that's how long this case has been unsolved. And look, there's not a lot of information here. It's funny. You mentioned Missy Beavers, and it's so reminiscent of Missy Beavers. You literally have a video of the murder. You have audio. You know the killer is talking on the audio, but you can't make it out. You have video of the vehicle, and yet here we are all these years later with no good idea of what happened. So let's talk a little bit about the potential theories in this case and what people think may or may not have happened. Now look, I think most people who see this case do not believe this was a random killing. The garage sale was not widely advertised and not posted on social media, so it's unlikely someone random would have seen that and known Liz would be setting up in the morning. Now here's the thing. People think it's not random. It's probably not random. It totally could be random. When you watch the video, there is a real possibility that you're seeing someone who, for whatever reason, is mentally deranged, and that this truly was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. That this person is driving around. They've been driving around all night. Who knows how long it's been before they've slept. I mean, it's just a possibility. They're driving around. They happen to see Sergio leave. They look over, and there's this woman all alone standing in her parking lot, and they pull up behind her, jump out with a gun, try to hand her a note explaining, about their Lord and Savior, the lizard people or whatever. Liz reacts in a way that insults them, and so they shoot her. I mean, that is absolutely a possibility that you can't ignore here. And in some ways, if it were random, and imagine this person's not from around there, that would explain some of the reason it's so hard to solve this case, because it's hard to solve random killings. Very difficult, incredibly hard, because all of the things you look to aren't there. All of the reasons you look, the motives, the people in their lives, the connections, all that stuff is just gone. So while I think most people would say it's not random, I think it's one of those things you cannot completely rule out.
And one thing to note on whatever this person's motive is, whether it was random or not, is it seemed clear that murder was the end game, not robbery or stealing something. Because here we have a bunch of goods for sale, so even if it's a yard sale, usually yard sale items are priced pretty low, but they are things of value. Usually we keep our things in our house. Here we have items outside of the house. So if this person was looking to steal something, that is not what they came to do. They came to kill. They didn't grab anything off of Liz. They didn't grab, valuables as they're running away. And that's just something to keep in mind of what factors into this person's motive.
So yeah, it's possible it's random, but as Alice said, it's not a robbery. No, not many people knew about the yard sale, so it's not something where somebody would think maybe she has a bunch of money. They didn't even wait for her to have the yard sale, to have the money. The yard sales were at random times, so it wasn't somebody who thought, in a year, when they have another yard sale, I'm going to do this. So most people think it's not random. So putting aside the story I just told, assume for a second it's not random. It's obviously not a robbery. If it was a robbery, they decided pretty quick they weren't going to rob anybody. So this leads people to think that she was targeted, and she was targeted by someone she knew. Liz's greeting to the shooter indicates to investigators that she didn't know the shooter personally. So the good morning that she says to them is the kind of thing you would say to a customer, right? To someone new who's wandering up. Hey, good morning. Welcome. Do you see anything you like? That kind of good morning. Not like, oh, good morning, Bob. How's it going, right? It wasn't that kind of interaction. So that makes investigators think that she did not recognize this person. Now, look, one thing to consider, if it were a man or even a woman in disguise, maybe she would not recognize this person immediately in any event. But either way, she didn't recognize them at the time for whatever reason. So either the shooter knew Liz, but she didn't know them, was in disguise, or was a hired hitman. The hitman theory has gained further credibility when you consider the theory that the shooter returned to the crime scene to ensure that Liz was dead, or maybe even take a photograph for proof. Now, the thing is, that is an assumption, because it's equally plausible that this person was an out-of-towner who did not know the area and had to turn around to get out of the neighborhood, and that this really was a mistake that they drove by. But the hitman theory is very popular.
And if it were a hitman and they came back for like proof of what they've done, you would think if they're a professional, they would know to do it before they leave, rather than be like, ah, crap, I forgot that I have to send a photo before I get paid. But one thing about hitmen is you kind of have to go look for them where they are, and it's less risky for someone to kill someone not in their own town. If they are an out-of-towner and they got lost, that's why they came back around. They weren't coming back around, but rather they were turned around and had to drive the opposite direction to come to leave the scene of the crime. That could still point towards hitman. So who would want to hire a hitman to kill Liz? One theory is that Sergio, the husband, hired someone to kill Liz. The first person police looked at as a potential suspect was Liz's husband, Sergio Barraza. Sergio stood to benefit from a $500,000 life insurance policy should Liz die. This is why I have no life insurance policy, Brett. If I die, you guys get nothing. Nothing at all. You want me alive, not dead.
It's a good thing I took out one on you then.
So those of you in the chat who've already been thinking ahead and asking, was there a life insurance policy on Liz? The answer is yes. And not insignificant, $500,000. But police looked into Sergio and did not come across anything in his financial history that would link him to the murder. One really quick thing to note, not just the police look into these sorts of like fraud for insurance policy, the insurance companies themselves do as well. They also have an interest in making sure that they are rightfully paying out an insurance policy. So just know that. Those of you who are thinking about doing something bad to get an insurance policy, you'll be investigated by your insurance company, which in some instances might have more of an incentive to make sure they get it right than the police. But really, in this situation, Sergio was pretty much cleared as a suspect. He also took and passed a polygraph test. You know how we think about polygraph tests. It is not a surefire way to know if someone is lying or not, but for what it's worth, he took the polygraph test and passed it. And one other thing to note, if this were a potential motive for Sergio, is that he has not cashed in on the life insurance policy, and he's also said he won't do so until the murder is solved. So that's pretty good for him. If what he wanted was money, and usually you do it when you're like in need of money right away, not in 10, 15, 20 years. Who knows? At this rate, this murder's not getting solved, really, maybe ever. So he may never cash it in. Maybe it's a great ploy. Maybe he's like, crud, they got really close to me. I'm going to make sure no one continues to look at me. But whatever it is, he has not benefited from the life insurance policy since Liz died. There are rumors online that Sergio or Liz may have been having an affair, and the shooter was someone involved in this said affair. But again, there doesn't seem to be any evidence, at least nothing that the police have revealed, that would point to any truth behind this rumor. Sergio and Liz also appear to be happily married by all accounts. Remember what they're doing here. They're having the yard sale to earn some extra money to go celebrate their 5-year anniversary with a trip together that they had planned, that I assume they picked Orlando because this is some place that they enjoyed together, and it was going to be a fun vacation together. Now, a few years later, Sergio did remarry, but he did not meet his new wife until a year and a half after Liz was killed. So that defeats any sort of allegations that maybe he was having an illicit affair, wanted to off Liz so that he could get married to the new woman. She was not even in the picture at the time. And his new wife also took a polygraph test, also passed.
Look, when you first hear this case, you're not 10 minutes into it before you're like, it was the husband. The husband probably
absolutely
hired a hitman. And there are little things about it that point you in that direction. The fact that so few people knew about this event. The fact that ordinarily Liz would have been at work that day. The fact that whoever did it, if it was a random act of violence, they didn't kill her on her way to Starbucks or on the way back. They didn't strike when Sergio was there. In fact, it seems like they struck right after he left. The fact that Sergio left a few minutes earlier than he tended to do so. The fact that Liz is now outside and vulnerable. All these things tend to make you think this is a setup. She's being set up. The signal is you see the white panel van leave. That's when you strike. So it makes sense initially, but the police, this is 2019, okay? The police would have turned Sergio's life upside down. There would have been so much evidence to dig through. Phones, social media, all his financial transactions. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. And it doesn't seem like they came up with anything. I mean, they would have gone through his life with a fine-tooth comb. If he was having an affair, they would have discovered it. They didn't find any of that. And I'll say this, there are interviews with Sergio that he's given recently in an effort to sort of drum up attention on the case because it's been a while and get people thinking about this again, where he talks about this. If he's guilty, he's a great actor. I mean, if he's guilty, it doesn't surprise me he passed a polygraph because when you watch him, he's totally believable. This is not Scott Peterson. You will watch him and you will think that man didn't have anything to do with this. Maybe he did, but that is not going to be your initial thought. And even though there's some smoke there, it seems like the wind has blown it all away. And Sergio, probably our best potential suspect, doesn't seem like he is responsible for this. But there's another interesting theory, someone connected to both of them. Liz's father-in-law, Sergio's father, hired someone to kill Liz. Sergio suggested to investigators that his father may have been responsible for Liz's murder. At least that's how it's reported, is that Sergio was one who suggested this. According to Sergio, his father had been reckless with money, and as a result, the family business where Sergio worked was struggling with cash. Sergio went on to tell investigators that he had recently had paychecks bounce, which had concerned Liz, so she confronted her father-in-law about it. And perhaps her father-in-law thought a $500,000 life insurance payout to Sergio would help stabilize the family business after all of his financial missteps. But nevertheless, once again, investigators went all in on this theory, really looked into it, and could not find any evidence of it. They couldn't track anything financially, and they couldn't find any phone records or anything else that would link him to the murder. It certainly wasn't him that did it, so it would have to be a hired person. And we've talked about this before. Unless you just got a whole lot of cash laying around, which Sergio's dad obviously didn't have because he wasn't great with money, you got to come up with the money somewhere to hire a hitman or something. And it's usually pretty easy to track that. These aren't the things that you just, maybe Sergio's dad's trading in Bitcoins. I don't know. But it seems like if he were involved in this, you would have been able to trace him. And up to this point, the police have not been able to do so.
And that's also kind of a leap right? There's no indication that Sergio was like helping to float his father's business. So a $500,000 payout to Sergio, there's no like clear indication that that would be then turned around and put into the business either. Some people may think, well, $500,000 seems like a lot of money for a young woman, 29 years old. Remember, the younger you are, the cheaper these policies are. So to jump from like 100 to 250 to 500,000, we're talking about just a couple dollars a month, which based on mortgages, car payments, what have you, if you're like, well, if I start paying now, an extra $3 a month gets me $500,000 instead of $100,000. A lot, you'll see that happen, especially if you're getting life insurance young. Because another thing to note is not a lot of young people have life insurance because they think, I'm going to live forever. I don't need life insurance now. So to get life insurance in your 20s, relatively cheap, and you usually get large amounts like this for a low price. So we kind of have talked about and ruled out in some ways 2 potential people who could have hired the hitmen. What if the 501st Legion is involved? There's speculation. There are people online who think that the murder could have been linked to Liz and Sergio's involvement with the 501st Legion. Some believe that maybe someone in the group or someone Liz met through the group was either infatuated with her or with Sergio, which prompted the killing. But again, there's really no evidence to support this theory, and it seems to be purely speculation. Complete speculation, because I think it looks to just what the couple are involved in. And one of the organizations they're involved in is the 501st Legion. I think if they were involved in like their YMCA or their church or the Girl Scouts, those, organizations may be on the suspect list as well. I note this because people talk about it online, so we've talked about it now. But again, looking at the evidence, there's nothing that really points to the Legion as having something to do with this murder.
So that brings us to our theories. And I'll go ahead and start with mine, Alice, and then you can tell us what you think. And I've been thinking about how I want to say this because I don't want to get myself into trouble. But, here's the thing. The great thing about having a podcast, which has been moderately successful, is you build a community, and there are all these people involved in the community, and the vast majority of them are wonderful people. But every now and then, you have people who, for whatever reason, just don't function in society in the same way that everybody else does. And sometimes those people can be kind of scary. And if you have the wrong kind of interaction with them, sometimes you wonder if, like, one day this could go really bad. And we've seen this happen, whether it's Selena or some of the stalkers for Hollywood celebrities, or Steffi Graf. I think it was Steffi Graf who was stabbed on the tennis court by someone. You see those things happen. The 501st Legion is a group of a lot of wonderful people from a lot of diverse backgrounds. They are passionate about what they do. And you got to remember that Liz was a member of the command staff, so she was higher up in this. I know there's not a lot of proof here connecting the 501st Legion to Liz, but the issue I have with this case is all of the people who have an obvious connection to Liz do not seem as though they are involved in this. Number one, she did not have any enemies. There's no evidence that she was having an affair. There was no evidence that Sergio was having an affair. There's absolutely no evidence they were unhappy. There's no evidence that he hired a hitman or that his father hired a hitman. There's just no evidence that anyone involved in her life did this, which means it either is random, just a random murder, which maybe it is, or it's somebody with some tangential connection to Liz who decided to take action. And I just wonder if that's what it is. And this strange interaction between this person and Liz and what they're even wearing. I mean, what they're wearing almost feels like it could be some sort of Star Wars outfit. The long flowing robe thing. I mean, you can't make it out very well. The high boots. It just feels like maybe this could be connected to Star Wars in some way. And that's what I think it is. I think whether Liz actually had a negative interaction with this person or not, or whether this person had some sort of complaint about the way the Legion was being run, that is what led to this. And that's why you had that strange 5 or 6 second interaction after the person pulls out the gun. Something happened there, I think, that was connected to this in some way. And that's what led to this. I don't know if we'll ever know that for sure. And I recognize that this is a gut feeling type thing for me. I can't point you to anything beyond what I've already said as far as evidence, but it just feels to me like something along those lines is behind what happened to her.
And to let people kind of better understand that, can you explain what the Legion is? Like, who's in it, what they do, what it has to do with?
So the 501st Legion, so Darth Vader,
I knew you would know this, by the way.
His Legion of Stormtroopers was the 501st. Those were the stormtroopers who were loyal to him. Those are the stormtroopers that he led into battle. So the 501st Legion is a group of people who they like to do things like dress up like stormtroopers and go to conventions and that sort of thing. Liz would visit hospitals. She had her stormtrooper get up, but instead of a gun, she actually had like a baby Yoda or something, before there even was a baby Yoda, in her holster, and she would pull it out and it made the kids happy and that kind of thing, right? So they would dress up, they would go to conventions, but it also had become this social organization. It had become a community. It was a philanthropic organization. Like so much in life, we're all looking for something to belong to. It was somewhere where if you're 29 years old, you could find friends with similar interests who love Star Wars and like to dress up and do nice things around the community. So that's what it is. And like I said, I don't want to cast aspersions on them or on anybody else. But when you get a big group of people together, there's always going to be maybe some people who, for whatever reason, don't fit in or find fault or become insulted or don't like the way the organization is being run or feel slighted. Any number of things could have happened, which for the average person would never result in violence. But for somebody who already maybe had some issues, could have led to something like this. So that's my purely speculative theory on what happened in this case.
So one thing to note about the Legion, as you've described it, is it's much more than a social organization. It's kind of become people's entire communities. It's where you volunteer. It's where you socialize. It's where you talk about Star Wars, something that you're passionate about. And we do see organizations that blossom more into almost maybe a person's entire identity rather than just one aspect of it. So I hear what you're saying. I'm going to have a different theory, only because there's no evidence to support that. I think the fact that nothing has been solved and the interaction is so strange means that we kind of have to think about all possibilities. I don't think this is random. Even though that actually may be the most likely theory, is that this is some random person who was in some gang initiation and they were just driving around. The reason I don't necessarily think it's just like a gang initiation is they've been driving around since 2 a.m. They could have found someone to shoot if they wanted to at 2 a.m. Not maybe in this neighborhood, because this is kind of a nice neighborhood. People are probably in bed asleep. But if they were looking to kill someone, Houston is massive. There are lots of parts of Houston that don't sleep. You can go to strip malls that are still open late into the evening, late into the night hours. There are truck stops. There are places to go in Tomball, in the Houston area, if all you needed was a person to murder. That's why I think that Liz was targeted. I think the fact that they knew to pull into the Goddard School parking lot, which is close by, to be able to either get their bearings, breathe, watch for the white panel van to drive away. They knew enough. It could have been random, but I think the 3 minutes between the time that Sergio left and this car came just seems like they were waiting. They came to Skillbat at 2 o'clock. They waited for the opportunity to arise. Now, who targeted her? That I don't know. But I don't think this was completely random, especially because of the brief 6-second interaction that they had. I don't think that Liz knew who this person was. I also don't think this was a hitman. I think the person who killed her was the person who wanted to kill her. So I don't think that Sergio is involved. I have no indication that anyone is involved but the person who really did it. And this neighborhood, if you were looking to kill someone, this is kind of like a random place. It's a nice neighborhood. Their home isn't like right on the highway. It's not right near the entrance. of all the houses to go after, this doesn't stand out as the most obvious one to target if what you wanted to do was be able to kill someone. And like I said earlier, I think this person meant to kill, not to rob, not to threaten, not to do anything. There wasn't enough time to really make Liz scared other than those 6 seconds. So if this person wanted to instill fear into Liz, they didn't give her much time to be scared based on whatever they showed her or handed to her, or even with the brandishing of the gun. It all happened so quickly that I think the end game was just to have her dead. So maybe our theories aren't that far apart because they're kind of getting at the same thing. I just don't think it was random. I think Liz was intended to be the target all along, and that the person was watching for Sergio to leave, and it didn't matter if he left at 7 o'clock or 6:48 because the person was sitting there in their Nissan Frontier waiting for Sergio to leave, and that this person was not hired but was the person who had the grudge against Liz.
This is a case where I really think you're one piece of evidence away from figuring it out. Obviously, a big one would be whoever owned or rented that truck, but just evidence of some sort of grudge against Sergio or against her, evidence of an affair, evidence of some beef in the Legion. I mean, there's just one piece that we're missing here. And if you had that one piece, it'd be like a domino that knocks over all the other dominoes and leads you there. And that's why this case is very solvable. It is very solvable. It's not that old. It's only 5 years old. We have the same amount of evidence before, that we do now, and it's mostly a video. And there's a reward, and it's $50,000, which is a pretty significant reward. That's money that can change somebody's life. This case very much has the potential to be solved. I hope if you're out there listening, you will watch this video. Look, I get it. We're going to put 2 videos up. If you only want to watch the second one, you can see the truck. You get a pretty good view of the truck. If you have the sound on, the sound is disturbing because you'll hear Liz scream and you'll hear gunshots. But if you just want to watch that one, you can see the truck. If you watch the first video, you'll see the entire murder. Now, if you watch the first half of the video, you'll see the person before the murder happens. I would recommend at least watching the first half of that video and watching the second video with the sound off for the truck. If you do that, you won't see the murder, but you might see something that you recognize and something that could crack this case. If you have any information on this case, call Crime Stoppers at 713-222-8477. That's 713-222-TIPS. And remember, there's a $50,000 reward for any information that leads to the shooter. Go out, claim that reward, solve the case.
And here's an encouragement to open your minds to who this potential person could be. Mental illness can lead people to do very strange things. They could be part of the Legion. They could be completely random. They could be someone who worked in the neighborhood as an electrician, as a handyman, as someone who goes to Liz's grocery store down the road within a mile, saw her one day buying groceries, followed her home, and had been following her home for days or weeks or months, or just watched her because most people go grocery shopping at the same place week after week. This could be someone that she doesn't know, but they may have been watching her. And this is why when people say she had no enemies, that could be absolutely true. She could have no idea this person had an entire kind of fantasy in their minds about her. So don't get, pigeonholed into it's an organization that she was a part of or that she must have known even in some tangential way. This person, Tomball's big. Houston's big. There are creepers. There are people who watch people. There are people who follow people. Be aware of your surroundings at all time. The fact that this hasn't been solved yet, despite having video and audio of it, and we know the description of the car, I just want to encourage people to open up their minds as to who this shooter potentially could be. And Houston is large enough that you probably go to the same grocery store. You probably go to the same hospital to volunteer at. You may have seen this person before. So keep an open mind when you watch those videos and see if maybe you know something, and you might just have the key to a missing piece of the puzzle that can help police solve the case.
Old Tomball.
Tomball,
Texas. Tomball. Okay, well, that's all we have on this case. Alice, you got time to answer a couple questions?
Absolutely. I'm really proud of us for doing all these cases in one episode.
We're doing so good.
Look at us go.
Look at us. Look at us. Ordinarily, this case would have been at least 4 episodes, but we've got it down to 1. There you go. I don't want to hear anybody complain again. Okay, so let's see. So this person, so Jay wants to know, Alice, I'll ask you this question, given your change of profession. As a fellow prosecutor, I'm interested in knowing, have either of you felt prosecutor burnout? And if so, how did you deal with it?
It's a good question. I think that can be broadened out to lawyer burnout. I mean, I think anyone would lie if they say that they didn't feel burnout at some points in their cases, whether it's after finishing a very long investigation, very long trial, or having lost something in court just to feel like the adrenaline leave your body and have the whole existential crisis of like, what am I doing with my life? Am I doing any good? But those are typically blips in like a longer, view of what we do. So while I may feel burned out at times in what I do, it's usually not a lasting thing. Because if it were lasting, I think I would stop practicing. And especially when I was a prosecutor, I had the benefit of like recognizing I really could do good every single day, that there were cases that would not be prosecuted, whether it was that there just weren't enough bodies to be able to prosecute them if I didn't do it, or that I knew I was going to dig in and like really be able to connect with this victim of child sex trafficking. Because, for example, I had a young girl who refused to talk to all men. Completely understandably, every man in her life had quite literally trafficked her and pimped her out, and she was not about to speak to any man. And she specifically told her guardian ad litem, I will only speak to a woman lawyer. And I looked around my office and I was the only one. And so in those instances, it was like, I know that there are times that really I am put in the right place at the right time to be able to do what only I can do. Not because I'm the best at it, but like I am put here for a reason. So I think the benefit of being a prosecutor is recognizing there are times like that where, if not me, maybe nobody else.
I think that pretty much everybody, no matter what your profession is, you can have burnout. People talk about it a lot in the law, and obviously we're lawyers. I don't think there's any magic bullet. I think what you tend to see with people who have burnout is a couple things happen. Number one, their jobs become more and more their lives. And number two, they get sort of stuck a little bit in a rut of what they're doing. And I think it's really hard, particularly when you're a prosecutor, or maybe it's really easy. It's really easy for the first thing to happen. There's just so many cases. You can almost work as much as you want to work, right? And it's very easy to allow yourself to get caught in that. And I think you really have to set boundaries as best you can. We talked about this before. I don't really know if there's any such thing as work-life balance. I think it's just we're all doing the best we can. But somehow you have to set boundaries and remember yourself. And I think if you can always try and do new and different things, when you're a prosecutor, in a lot of places, you can move around a little bit. And it's very easy to get stuck in one place because you get really good at it, right? Like if you do enough wire fraud cases, you can do a wire fraud case in your sleep. And a lot of times that's what you do because you're the guy who knows how to do the wire fraud cases. And I would just encourage people to try as much as you can not to let that happen, because what I have found is, and actually one of the reasons I like appeals is because when you do appeals, you're doing all the appeals. And so you're doing all sorts of different law. If you can keep doing a little bit different stuff, don't be afraid to do different stuff, because I actually think that's where the joy comes. I mean, for me, like it's on the one hand, you love it when you don't have that much work and work's easy, but in fact, that's really when you're not very happy. Like when you have interesting, difficult things going on that make you feel like you're actually, there's a reason I'm here. I'm actually using my mind. I'm not just coming in and punching a clock. It can become much more fulfilling. So that's what I would say. Number one, don't let it become your life. And number two, don't get stuck doing the same thing every day, all the time.
And that's why we started a podcast.
Exactly. Here we are.
This is literally how we deal with our burnout, is to talk about what we do all day.
Okay.
We might have a problem.
We might have a problem. So this person is, I can't find a name that's not taken. That's pretty good.
That's pretty funny.
And they want to know, is there an actor or actress that when a new film is released, you go to just because they are in it?
Ryan Reynolds is hilarious. I mean, like his Instagram is like the funniest. He and Blake Lively are like just hilarious. But everything he does, I just think is really funny. What was he in? Like Fall Guy? Like I would never normally watch that movie. It's like about being in a video game or something. But he was so funny in it. Totally, picked it out to watch it because he's easy on the eyes and also because he's hilarious. And he seems to really love his wife and kids, which I appreciate.
I'm going to go with Shah Rukh Khan, for those of you listening to us in India, the greatest Bollywood actor of all time. I love him. I like Bollywood a lot. And if Shah Rukh Khan is in it, I want to see it. So that's going to be mine. I don't know of any American actor that I feel that way about. I used to really like Jennifer Lawrence. Her stuff was good. Obviously, Tom Cruise used to be like Tom Cruise was in a movie. It was an event thing. But I feel like Ryan Reynolds is probably the closest thing we have right now to that. What was the name of the guy who was in Barbie?
Oh, he was in The Notebook.
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan
Gosling. Yeah.
I don't
Ryan
feel that
Gosling.
way about
Apparently
him
it's the
because, to
Fall
be
Guy.
totally honest, I really like Ryan Reynolds, like as a person. He just makes me laugh so hard, everything he posts. And that makes me like him
Deadpool
on
is
screen.
great. I mean, Deadpool.
Again, these are not normally movies I'd watch. It's just him. I just like him as a person.
The guy who played Thor, pretty much everything he's in is good.
He's also like a human tank.
He is a human tank.
I don't
That's
understand.
true.
Do these people just work out all the time?
Jennifer Connelly used to be, everything she was in was great. And still is. I mean, she's still great in everything. But yeah, I just don't feel like we have that, like back in the day, Indiana Jones. What's his name?
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford. I mean, that Harrison Ford was pretty much, shoot, for like 20 years, everything he was in was good. I mean, everything he touched turned to gold. So, but anyways. All right. Well, that's all I've got. Alice meant Free Guy, not Fall Guy.
I meant Free Guy, not Fall Guy. Sorry.
Yeah.
There was another movie. Something with Fall.
Free Guy was when he's like in a video game and he has to get out of the video game.
That one. It was really funny. He was really funny.
That's a good
because he plays a caricature of himself, which is why it's funny.
Right.
Anyways.
Okay. Well, anytime
we
you
covered a
guys
lot. It's been a
watch
wild ride, Brett.
Diwali Dilhania La Jajinga, I am there for you. It is an amazing Bollywood movie, the longest running movie in history. It's been playing at the same theater in Mumbai for like 25 years now.
Seriously?
Shah Rukh Khan.
Without a break?
It's the man. Okay, that's all we got for today. We'll be back next week with who knows what. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the prosecutors.
Welcome back to.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Oh, Brett. You guys,
Sorry.
you gave him way too much bourbon at CrimeCon.
I need a drink of my Brillante Tehuacan.
I'm like waiting with bated breath, and here you are popping a cold one.
It's thirsty. Okay, here we go.